Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's August 22nd, 2012, and this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Wareham School Committee. It's approximately 7:10, and I'll open with public participation. Is there anybody who would like to address the committee? Mrs. Ekstrom, you're welcome to be here. Well, should I reserve judgment?
Not at all. Good evening.
Good evening.
Last week I was at the meeting, and committee member Mr. Sylvia suggested putting a warrant article on the fall town meeting for the roof. He brought up a number of $125,000. The spring town meeting warrant, the request was 110. At the election ballot that failed almost on a 2-to-1, it was also for 110. So what I would like to respectfully request this board to consider is to put an RFP out where you would get qualified bidders and qualified contractors that could come out, look at the roof, give a price on it, and then when you went to town meeting, you would have a realistic price. And on the RFP, you could have pending town meeting approval. And then you could come with a real dollar amount rather than this amount that, you know, inflated 12% in the last 3 weeks. But if you had a real number, I think that, and I'm not saying whether I'm in favor of it or not, but if you had a real number that I think people could, you know, see. I personally, I mean, I've seen the pictures of the roof. I'm not an expert, so I don't know if $110,000 would have covered it or if it can be done for $20,000. But if you put an RFP out and get qualified people in to look at it, so I'd like you to at least consider that. That's my number one. And my number two is for the chairman. I would appreciate it if, whether it's the chairman on, I mean, as in your capacity as the chairman on this committee or on the transportation committee, if in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of meetings, if I could be put on either one of the agendas, if to discuss the transportation issues. I was on the former transportation subcommittee. I did a lot of research. I have all of the paperwork from 1994 on, from 4 different committees that I've gone through, that I've done the research, that I have a formal presentation in both written form and PowerPoint presentation. And in the past 2 years, since that committee was abruptly stalled, I have updated that with additional information. And I would appreciate, whether it's at this meeting or at the transportation meeting, to have your consideration to be on the agenda for that.
That it?
That's all.
Okay.
Not too bad?
First, I appreciate your point number one, and I do agree with you that the credibility of any request for money is enhanced if you have more concrete. I don't know that concrete information isn't available, but we'll certainly take your suggestion under advisement. With respect to the second point, I just wanted to understand your goal, the goal of your presentation.
The goal of the presentation is just to provide additional information. I had, under the last subcommittee that I was on, I had taken the time out. I had talked to certified CDL bus mechanics. I had done the research as far, just for a little bit of history. In 1994, the late Mary Jane Pillsbury was on one of the first transportation subcommittees, joint committees. I believe it was in '97 where there was a second one. In 2003, there was a third one, and that one, Mr. Savaggio was the selectman liaison. And then the last one, when that happened, Mary Jane had given all of her information to Bruce. Bruce had given all of it to me. So I have 18 years worth of information on what have been consistent problems and reviews. So it's really just more or less to give you the information that I have. It's not to say do this or this is why this isn't working. It's just from doing the research on it, in that information, doing the research on it, currently talking to different people in the field. I just feel that 2 years ago, it was actually in August, and at the time, I was told that my presentation was going to be done in September. And then at the end of August, the school committee canceled that. I never got to present that, and I would just appreciate the opportunity to do it, seeing I volunteered my time to do all the work on it. You can throw it out when you're done if you want, but I would just like the opportunity to present it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else who would like to address the committee? Seeing none, we'll move to the minutes of the meeting of August 8th. There are two sets of those minutes because the school committee presented to the finance committee prior to the regularly scheduled meeting, and then there's the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting of August 8th. Are there any questions, additions, corrections to those minutes?
No.
If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 300. That would be for the minutes of the FinCom,
Correct.
okay? Now I'll take a motion for the regular scheduled meeting of the school committee, which started at approximately 7 o'clock.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 300. Thank you very much.
I guess so. But while we're on the subject of the McKinney-Vento of those minutes, is it appropriate to discuss anything about that at this time or later in tonight's meeting?
Let's see. Well, the next subject is a report on the Board of Selectmen's meeting of 8/21, which did not occur, but
So
it
I'll
relates,
wait.
but,
Yeah.
no, but it relates to, part of that relates to the McKinney-Vento money, so,
I'll wait till then.
okay, so I'll make a short presentation and then take your question or comment at that time. We were under the impression from communications that had taken place with the chairman and a member of the Board of Selectmen that the school committee would be asked to present last night at the Board of Selectmen's meeting relating to two different sums of money that were approved to come to Wareham after the April town meeting. In my conversations with Mr. Holmes, it was clear that as a result of the less frequent meetings that are occurring of the Board of Selectmen, that the agenda was going to be too full, and that he would be inviting us at a future meeting specifically to discuss the warrant articles that have been created for the October town meeting. Although this is unofficial, he did assure me that his sense of the requests that we would be making was that people felt they were appropriate, in order, and that we should not be concerned about the town leadership. What town meeting, of course, chooses to do is up to town meeting, but that at least the Board of Selectmen, and based on our meeting with the Finance Committee, would be in support of those warrant articles. So, bottom line is we can expect to be invited at some time before town meeting when the Board of Selectmen will be discussing those particular warrant articles. Any questions on that?
I was going to say, is it appropriate for us to go back to the Finance Committee or not?
Sure.
I mean, before then, because
Oh.
they were looking for some feedback from the selectmen, but they'll probably be the meeting before the town meeting.
Well, they will discuss the warrant articles
This is true.
in whatever order they see fit, and so will the Board of Selectmen.
That's true.
And what we were trying to get, and perhaps we were overly anxious in trying to get it for obvious reasons, because school is starting September 4th, and it does have implications for that. We were trying to get a comfort level, and even though there was no vote taken and it was all unofficial, I think we've gotten that comfort level, and that comfort level is necessary to give our superintendent guidance as to how to proceed in both those issues.
Okay.
Now, McKinney-Vento, you had a question.
Well, it was for both. It was for both. of
Okay.
them. Yeah, that's fine.
Is that it?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
Fine, okay. The only other report that I wanted to give to people was, in my role as representing the school committee on the Cape Cod Collaborative Board, I wanted to let people know that the FY12, which ended like most school districts on June 30th, it was a successful year for the Cape Cod Collaborative for a number of reasons. Overall, the programs were either on budget or ahead of budget. And as a matter of fact, there are currently plans to create a satellite of the alternative learning program at the, I'm going to get this correct, I hope, at the Sandwich YMCA location. So we're excited that we will be able to create an even more convenient location for an alternative learning location. Just so everybody understands, that is similar to the kind of program that we have in West Wareham Academy. So while we don't take advantage of it, there are many other locations around the Cape that do and find it a compelling service. The only other thing I would add about the Cape Cod Collaborative is they have really gotten their financial house in order. And by that I mean, for the first time at the end of fiscal year 12, they were able to establish 3 different reserves. I want to emphasize the word reserve as compared to a trust, and I'll explain that in a moment. They established a small operating reserve of approximately $40,000. They established a small capital reserve of $40,000. And most significantly, if Dick Paulson was in the audience, he'd be applauding. They started to fund a reserve which will ultimately become a trust for what everybody knows as OPEB, which is really other post-employment benefits. They were able to put about $180,000 into the OPEB reserve, which, for those people who haven't followed this somewhat arcane area of accounting, it has to do with how do you pay for the benefits of people who retire from the organization where they worked, and in this case, the Cape Cod Collaborative. So while the actual liability is approximately $900,000, the fact that you've even established a reserve and have started to fund it is critical. We could only hope that at some point in time, Wareham would be in a position financially to do the same. Any questions on the collaborative? Okay. I will move on to the superintendent's report.
At our last, I believe it was at the last meeting, Mike had a question about school choice. And so I provided in your package an explanation from the SE website about choice. And I'll go through the documents. So the first 2 documents are right off of the finance page at the Department of Education. And it talks about the calculation. And basically, when a student or their parents determined to have a child come to the Wareham Public Schools instead of going to the public schools in their town or city, it's called choice. And it sometimes happens because somebody works, let's say one of our teachers would prefer to have their child going to school in Wareham so that it's closer in case the child is sick or something like that. That might be one reason. Another reason for choice is if people are moving into town, they still live somewhere else, they may live in Plymouth, they're moving to Wareham, they ask to come to start the year in Wareham, and they're considered choice until they're actually living in Wareham. And there are also programmatic reasons. So our cooperative school, which is an alternative junior senior high school that offers a diploma as part of the PM program, a lot of districts find that a necessary thing for some of their students that are about to drop out, are short some credits for a diploma, and they come to our PM2 program to get their diploma, to finish up their degree. And they're choice students. In fact, the greatest number of students last year in the choice program were in our PM2 through the cooperative school. And therefore, that is the majority of where that funding goes, is to support positions at the cooperative school. It also helps if we don't have enough resources to fund the PM2 program or summer schools. So when we have children that cannot afford the tuition for the summer school program, the choice is where we get the money to then help pay the teachers so that we do have the summer program. And every year, as part of the budget, we go through, and certain positions are funded through choice because we don't have enough in the regular LEA budget. And then there is a balance, and if I'm going to page 3, it's actually page 4, which is a chart that shows the different revolving funds for the school department. This also came through the Business Managers Association, and it shows what is acceptable to use different revolving accounts for, and where some have to be used specifically for that interest, adult and continuing education, and it's department activities, revenue source, fees and programs. It's for adult education, continuing education, adult fitness, and summer school and community school programs. But when you look at choice, which is the last one at the bottom of that page, it is for educational expenses. So it's a much more open account. It's not specific for materials. It can be for staffing. It can be for materials. And it even under capital, instructional equipment that could not be funded from the school department is also allowable. And there is no spending ceiling in this particular account, and whatever is not used moves forward to the next year. And if we had any reserve at all in our accounts, it would be in this account, which kind of makes up the difference where we wind up with a shortage or a need that comes up that we haven't budgeted for. And that's why at the end of fiscal 12, when we were looking at, after using the revolving account down to 0 in transportation, we were looking at moving forward to October town meeting with a bill for about, I'm going to approximate about $70,000 for gas to the town. And I had a conversation with the chairman. We talked about going forward to the town and asking for additional money that we didn't have, and then it was the DPW that would be short in their account if we didn't pay it. And we made a decision to use some funds from choice to make that difference up.
Okay, I'm looking at it here, and it's, I think, $87,000 in $12.
Okay. I
But
stand corrected.
it was 70 at one point it was. But in all of the uses that you mentioned for the school choice funds, where in there do you think it allows for busing, transportation?
Given that some students that are choice students may in fact get transported. So if we were at the cooperative school in the day program and they were driven to a job site, therefore they used our transportation, we could bill for that service and then use it as such.
Do you think there was $87,000 worth of that?
I think that I used some flexibility that I thought I had in that account, to be honest.
There's, as Barry will tell you, when he told me what he wanted to do, I had reservations from the get-go. But let me read a quote from the material that Barry sent us. And to me, there's an expression in business that when you write language that you can drive a truck through, which means it is so wide open that it allows for anything. So the quote is, therefore, Allowable expenditures include any expenditures for staff, materials, equipment, or services that directly enhance the quality of a district's educational programs and benefit students who currently attend district schools. That's a quote that to me says he could have used it for literally anything.
I would respectfully disagree because it does have a separate section specific to transportation where it does cover what Dr. Rabinovich said about, choice students being able to transport, those who did opt for choice. But what I'm hearing is that it wasn't equal or above to the $87,000. And, I'm not gonna split hairs. I'm gonna, look into something else, but it's the whole point that this is money intended for educational purposes, and we're using it for busing. And I wish I had the quote where you were quoted in the Standard Times as saying, if these overrides don't pass and such, we're looking at the death of our school system. And we got together, we got some money back to get 4 teachers back, and I don't think that gets us off life support. And I would much rather have that money gone to getting teachers or textbooks. That's all I'm saying.
I respect your point as well. So the point, there are really multiple points here. It seems to me that the quote that I made, there's no question that this money was used to benefit the students of the district because getting to school is a benefit. So in my mind, that's clear cut. On the other hand, I also agree with you that if it had been used to hire a teacher, that would have been an even greater benefit. And then the question becomes, if we had presented this $87,000 bill to town meeting, what would have happened?
Well, that would have been, I think that would have been the proper way to do it. That's what we were told we were gonna do, and then out of nowhere, this happened. So, right?
I don't recall that conversation one way or the other.
No, yeah, we were saying that we're looking at a deficit, it was coming, we knew it was coming, and we were gonna have to go to ask it for, at the time, about $70,000 on town meeting floor.
I'd have to check the minutes to be certain about the conversation that took place. I don't remember it being as definitive as you do, but I respect the fact that you do.
Okay.
And I would hope that with the addition of the McKinney-Vento money, with the money that we have in the revolving account, this will not be necessary. And if the committee wants to so direct, then we'll bring it to the committee before we do. If we have a deficit, we'll bring it to the committee before we make any such decision.
Here's the fundamental problem. I believe we have lots of support for the 120,000 and the 125,000 or whatever that number turns out to be for the McKinney-Vento and Chapter 70 money. My biggest concern, and I have reason to be concerned about this after conversations with the Finance Committee chair, or former chair, I should be more accurate, Frank Heath, that the demands on the town, the unexpected demands on the town, are such that if we had presented a $87,000 bill, they might very well have said, okay, but we'll take it out of the 125,000. So the net effect would have been no better for the school system. It might have appealed to you as a process, but in fact, in terms of generating additional funds to benefit the schools, I am not in any way convinced that it would have occurred, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but I remember when we were discussing going to town meeting, and you were concerned about the precedent that would set. I'm concerned about the precedent this sets, that we're now just, wheeling and dealing with choice funds to pay for transportation.
Well, the short answer is I don't think it sets a precedent, but Rhonda?
Well, I thought a lot about, Mike, what you said before, and, a lot of the statements that you were making. I thought about, read, looked into it on my own, like some of the notes from the past, and the conclusion that I came to is I agree with you wholeheartedly. If there was $87,000 out there of money that was extra, all of our bills were paid. All of our bills were paid. We had this $87,000, and I would like an opportunity to say whether we're going to buy a new bus with that or whether we're going to hire a teacher. Do I have the right to do that? That, you know, through the budgeting process, yes, but at the end of the day, it's up to the superintendent to decide. We vote on a budget and then it kind of goes from there. In this case, for me, it was paying our bills. And it's kind of like when I'm in my own household, you know, that sometimes I do have to take part of this to pay that. Again, this is not that you don't have to agree, but that I just wanted to put in that 2 cents, that that's the way that I saw this at the end of the day, was that we were looking at what funds do we have to be able to come up with the shortfall that we have in front of us. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what it was. We had a shortfall that was in front of us, and that bill had to get paid, so how do we do that?
All right, let me ask you all this. Let's say we've outsourced the busing, and now that the bus company Acme comes up 87 lads short. Do they come to town meeting, or do they just eat it?
Well, the short answer to that question is, if they have signed a contract
Yep.
and it's cost them $87,000 more than anticipated, then they eat it.
Right. That's my point. I mean,
But then they would be taking that from another place. The thing is that where do we don't have the choice to eat it. We have to pay the bills.
right. But
Can-
anyway,
If
I'm
I
not-
can ask for
I wish I could
clarification.
I wish I could understand the point you were trying to make with that, because I don't think it went over my head.
it's sort of lends itself to the argument of outsourcing, is what I'm saying. Is that if we had a fixed cost that we knew we were going to spend every year, then we wouldn't have to worry about this. I mean, there's nothing saying this won't happen next year, right? I mean, with
Well-
the fleet getting older and older, and we're maintaining it more and more, right?
If that's where you're going, the problem with that is that there is no, well, you could theoretically sign a contract like that, but the reality is the contract will always have some flexibility in it so that extra services you ask for, field trips, athletic trips, all those other extra services which they charge on a per event basis, per hour basis, it's never going to be as simple as one number, beginning of the
Yeah.
year, and you can forget about it.
Well, and the one point that, if I may,
Yes.
that I might make on that is that in my head, I think that there are a dozen reasons why we should outsource. This could be, number 13 onto that. But at the end of the day, and more studies can be, we keep debating about the studies, but at the end of the day, there's hard data to basically say that it's going to cost at least $500,000 more to do that.
I know.
And so that's not, right now, that's not an option from the town side or our side. There is not $500,000 more.
No,
So
I know.
making the argument for me is, it's one of those arguments that people make to me, and I'm just first come up with a plan on how to find an additional $500,000, and I absolutely will have that debate on whether it's better for our students to outsource it, and the district and the community to outsource it and insource. But tell me how we're going to pay for it.
And I'm not necessarily in favor of outsourcing either. I'm just saying, when I see these sorts of things, we just don't worry about it when we outsource. It's just, I mean, that we don't worry about.
Please.
I think the problem comes because the transportation department has been underfunded for the level of service that we provide for a long time. And because we've been entrepreneurial and running the revolving account and doing things to make money, we've been able to take care of that. Well, as you said, because the things are getting older, because the price of gas has gone up, the price of tires, the expenses have gone up more than revenue, and therefore we're into this problem. Now McKinney-Vento comes, it gives us a little breathing room, but we may be right back where it is unless we come up with a long-term solution. One of the things we've had to do as part of the conversation, just to put it all out there, when I started in this district, late buses was something that transportation provided. So 2 days a week or 3 days a week, a late bus would come to the middle school, and it was paid for by the transportation department. Well, somewhere along the line during one of these economic dips, I was told no more late buses. And I said, but my teachers need to be able to say to a child that needs extra help that he can stay after school, so therefore I need a late bus. Well, then you need to pay for it. So I had to take money out of the middle school budget that I put in student activities and pay for it. So we actually, both the high school and the middle school, pay for late buses. So it's net school spending paying for transportation. Now, we could take a hard line and say we shouldn't do that, but we wouldn't have the money to run the service. And we have parent groups, we have PTAs that pay for field trips as a way of putting money into that to help offset some of those costs. And I really wish that we were not in that position and we could get the funding that we need for the services that we need for our students, but nobody has been able to do that. And it was mentioned tonight, we've had committees that have met over and over again. We've never come, because the town doesn't have enough revenue to pay for all of the services that are needed. And unfortunately, we're all fighting for that same piece of pie, and there isn't enough of it. And, you know, long-term solutions like, you know, some of the buildings at Rosebrook and other things like that, hopefully are gonna bring us in more tax dollars, and, you know, maybe we'll finally have enough. We tried with the overrides and it didn't
Yeah.
work.
The remarkable thing is when you go to these conferences, whether it's the Massachusetts Conference of School Committees, or this year I went to the local one in Boston for the national, you see all these vendors that provide all these services to school districts on a contract. And it's clear they exist and people are hiring them. But the number of vendors that this district uses is really small, and cafeteria services they're all over these conferences, because so many schools say, and I can understand why they do it, we didn't hire a superintendent to be a chief education officer, a chief cafeteria officer, a transportation officer, and all these variety of things. We wanted to just focus on education. And they literally make the conscious decision to spend a few extra bucks to give it to a private company to get the expertise so that the superintendent doesn't have to worry about it. We don't have that luxury.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have some other questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Not around that, but I want to make sure that's done, because mine's
done.
gonna go on.
It's done.
Okay. Was really happy to see this chart. I mean, being able to see, the chart was in 2005. Has there been updates to it since?
No, this was prepared and they have not done updates to it since.
Okay, so, this is the choice funds that a district anywhere in the Commonwealth can create, correct?
Correct.
The one that I saw that we have that is not on here is summer schools. Does that fall within, and driver's ed is another one. I'm just seeing that there are choice accounts that we have that, I mean, revolving accounts that
Thank
are
you.
on here, sorry.
So, different legislation allows you to create specific revolving accounts. So, at town meeting, we created one for, it's preschool tuitions.
Yeah.
It was kindergarten tuition, but we don't charge kindergarten tuition anymore. So now that is used just for preschool. Not every district has that one because they don't all offer preschool services.
But does that then have to, I'm sorry to interrupt, does that have to then fall underneath one of these
It
categories?
does fall under one of them, under one of the specific laws and regulations. It just wasn't listed at this particular time when this was created.
Okay. If you could.
Just like transportation, there are many districts that don't have a transportation revolving account because they outsource all of their things. Fees, if we did not charge athletic fees, we wouldn't have an athletic revolving account.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that ours then fall underneath one of these, that there's not two different lists, or we don't have an updated list.
And these are part of the audit that is done yearly. We have to hire the auditing firm to do the school committee set of accounts that we do, besides the town audit.
So can make sure you get on for this town meeting that we need to start a culinary arts revolving fund for the program that we have going on right now?
I don't want to ask, okay.
No, meaning, I know we don't, but I love that they have a revolving fund for culinary arts, that there are some schools that get to take advantage of that.
Well, at one point, I offered home economics at the middle school, and so did in the high school, and they needed funds to go out to buy supplies and so forth, and so that, part of that, and then they would sell things to put money into it.
It would be nice to know what these accounts then fall under from the state statute.
I can ask that at another meeting, we'll.
Yeah,
put
or
that
if
through.
it's just added on to the report that we get, but it's not really, I mean, that important. but it'd
Most of
just
them
be nice to
are
know.
now through 71A, because that allows us to move, to carry the money from year to year without going back and getting approval at town meeting.
Okay. And then the only other piece, going back to school choice just for a moment, when will we have the numbers of the number of Wareham households that are sending their children to another school going into the school year?
After the October 1 report, we should have that number by then.
October 1st?
And it does change, but we will put that on the agenda to deal with,
Great,
yes.
thank you. That's all I had.
As long as Michelle has it, we'll get part of the budget, part of it.
Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Palladino?
Come on down.
I believe I'm on the agenda first for senior privileges, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, I'm here once again in August again this year, asking for senior privileges to start effective the first week of school. It does require some paperwork, permission slips. I think you have a copy of those as well. And as you're aware, we did have to cut a significant amount of teachers. As a result, we did bring back study halls. With that being said, we would like to have senior privileges start effective the first week to alleviate some of the numbers in study halls, but also to reward seniors who've worked hard for 4 years, are on pace to graduate, have more than enough credits, have excellent attendance, excellent grades, a high GPA, no debt, and obviously the parental approval rather.
Questions?
I have-
Yes.
So Scott, if we didn't have to bring back study halls this year,
Correct.
would you be coming in front of us asking for senior privileges?
I would under different circumstances. It wouldn't be necessarily to try and minimize the numbers in study halls. It would be, as we did last year, for a certain group of seniors that have met the criteria. So
That
yes,
they
I'd be in
wouldn't
front.
be taking that class and that, I mean, they would essentially have a study hall that then they could use senior privileges for.
It wasn't a study hall. It was actually a scheduled period senior privilege. It was for mostly our advanced placement honor students that had a full caseload and needed the time to get prepared for their courses and examinations.
Okay. And then the other question that I have is, how is it determined when they take it? I mean, is it the student's choice on, because I know that if I want to sleep a little late, of course I would want it right in the beginning of the day. So-
Right, but keep in mind, they have to be in at the start of school no matter when it is.
That's right.
So if they do have it, and remember, our schedule rotates, so while it may be in the first thing in the morning one day, it won't be the next time that rotation meets, which is 2 days later. But they do have to be there at 7:35 to sign in, and then once they're in the building, then they can use their privilege for that period.
So, but how is it student
It's
based?
really the computer generated based on the needs of the students. The students have prerequisites that they put in and requests as well that get put into the system, and the computer schedules them trying to keep the class size as small as possible. So there's really no rhyme or reason.
They don't get to choose.
They do not get to
computer
choose. They
generated.
get to choose the privilege, and that gets put in as a request, just similar to a course. And the computer actually schedules it. So there's no rhyme or reason.
No, and I'm glad to hear that, because I mean, just you could probably determine that many of them would choose similar ones, and all of a sudden you have a mass exodus of 25 kids leaving all at the same time.
Right. Before we changed the schedule, we used to have fifth period, which was static, and it it was amazing that we had, and this was back when we had study halls a few years ago, it was amazing how out of the 75 students that had study halls 5th period, 68 of them were seniors. It was amazing how that worked out. But it's much smoother now with the new schedule, and obviously it helps us out as well. You may only have a handful or 2 handfuls of kids each period on senior privileges, so it makes it much easier to manage, especially for the secretary at the front office who's checking them in and checking them out.
Great, thank you, that's all the
Thank you.
questions I had.
Mike, you're all set?
I'll sit there.
So just to be clear, Scott, the GPA of 80 overall is a cumulative through their junior year?
Cumulative and at the end of term 4 for their junior year, that's correct. So there's 2 ways we look at
Because
it.
this is starting September 4th, so all of the data is based upon what they did through the end of their junior year.
Correct.
Okay, so that would mean 80 overall at least for their grades, no Ds or Fs in their junior year.
4th term junior year, and keep in mind, this isn't just if you're in good shape in September, you're good for the year. It's reevaluated by the senior dean, Mr. Lazarus, this year, every term. So there'll be kids that are on it in September that won't be on it in November.
Let's
And-
hope not.
Yeah, let's hope not is right. And of course, they had to have 95% attendance in their junior year.
Correct, and maintain that throughout their senior year.
Okay. So they're always at risk for losing it if they don't maintain it, is the bottom line.
It's very rare that a student loses it, but it can happen, and it does happen to a couple of students every year. But these are kids that are very strong academically, very serious, and it's very rare that a student gets taken off, but it does happen, unfortunately.
Now, am I correct in saying, and I didn't look back, that this is the same set of criteria that were used a year ago?
Correct. We increased the GPA at the school committee's request, I guess it was 3 years ago, and we increased that to 80%. But it is the same format as last year. That is correct.
Okay. Did you have any discussions with your team about any revisions?
We went through it both with the department heads and the deans, and we also went through it with a group of staff members when they took a look at our agenda in the spring, and it was unanimous. They wanted to maintain the same criteria. Everyone felt it worked, and again, there were very few kids that couldn't stay on it because they knew they had to keep things up, and it kind of eliminates that the old senior slide that you'd have in the spring. These kids have to stay focused for all 4 terms.
Do I remember correctly that there is the right of appeal?
There is an appeal. They can appeal to the principal, and there is an appeal process.
Did that occur last year?
No, it did not.
You're an intimidating fellow, eh?
I don't know about that. But we're always, there are always circumstances that sometimes students can't control. I think it was 2 years ago we did have an appeal, and there was some outside of school circumstances that we allowed the person to have it.
Okay. We ready for a vote?
Yes,
Okay, I'll take a motion.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor of senior privileges for the class of 2013?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 300. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pilot Club.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Quinn Stanley. She is a student who is a sophomore at Wareham High School, and she's here with me today to talk about the Pilot Club. And Quinn is an excellent student. She is class president.
Yep.
And class president of the sophomore class, and she's a very motivated young lady. So I appreciate you giving up some time during your vacation to be here.
Quinn, what do you think of senior privileges?
I think that it definitely gives something to the students that have worked very hard because work is challenging as you get into higher grade levels.
So you're looking forward to them?
When I get there, yeah.
Okay, I appreciate you hearing us on this. We have, at the high school, I think you're aware, we have a lot of clubs, but a lot of times what happens is either there's not the student interest or there's not the faculty interest. And so in this case, we have a faculty member, Mrs. Solano, that is very excited to be part of this club. And I'm excited because in my experience, we've had a lot of presentations to students, and a lot of times they come in and then students, they may remember it a year or two down the road, but that lasting impact that program had on the students when it was there that day is lost kind of in the transition. So I was excited when Quinn came down to see me at the end of the school year and mentioned that she would like to start a club with the help of Mrs. Solano in regards to Rachel's Challenge. I think you all, a couple of years ago, had a chance to see part of that program, and I know we ran it at night at the high school, and I know, Mr. Sweat, I know you were there, and I think there were a few other school committee members there as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Quinn and have her kind of talk about what she would like to see. I do want to mention that we did call the Scotty Montero Jr. Foundation and spoke with Wendy Montero, and she is going to be willing to utilize some resources from the Montero Foundation to train the students in this club as well. So other than the advisor, there should be no cost to the district. So I'm going to turn it over to Quinn so she can talk about her vision for this program.
I think that when Rachel's Challenge did come to the high school, it impacted a lot of people in a way that I hadn't seen before, and it made them think about their actions in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise. It made them think about how they were treating people and how they could improve the way they treated the community as a whole. But I think as time goes on, people do forget what the lesson was that was taught. But I think that if we had this club, it would reinforce the values that we needed to show the school. I think it would make the school more pleasant to be around if we did have this. They did talk about a Friends of Rachel Club after the seminar. I was invited to this group of people that were talking about the Friends of Rachel Club, and they did have like criteria that you should try to meet to, I don't know, make the school a better place, like introducing new students around the school so they feel welcome, or recognizing a group of the school for the work they do, like the janitorial staff every month, a specific group of people that you can recognize for the work they do. And I think that it'll make people realize what they do and how they treat people.
Great. Thank you, Quinn. Mike?
All set, thank you.
I was part of the night where Rachel's Challenge came, and I got to see the, not the night, but I'm sorry, I was actually there when the students were there. And so I got to see the presentation and experience it with them, and I had a similar experience as you, that when I turned around and just how the students reacted to it. And I stayed for a while so I could hear some of the conversations on the way out, and there really wasn't, I mean, people commented that even the ones that are, you know, show no emotion and nothing gets to them and they would probably make fun of it, that they were even absolutely moved by this. I went right out and friended Rachel's Challenge on Facebook. I don't know how many students, hopefully they did the exact same thing, because it gives you that constant reminder on a daily basis of just those little snippets of certain things that you can do, or what other schools are doing. And there's some amazing things that are going around this country because of Rachel's Challenge in schools to really help with harassing and bullying and just treating students better. So I applaud you for coming and saying that this is what you want to do. Can I just ask, have you taken an informal survey of how many students would actually want to be part of this club?
I haven't taken an informal survey, but I think there is the interest, and what I've talked about, people have wished for a club that would help anti-bullying and stuff like that, so I don't think there's going to be a problem with getting people involved once it starts.
And there's a prerequisite too for the club to be funded. They have to have a minimum, I believe it's 12 students that are going to be involved. So it's not something. And I know Quinn, and she'll drum up a lot of students to be involved. I'm not worried about her recruitment skills.
Is there going to be any criteria to be part of it, or?
No, I think that we
That
should
would kind of go against the whole entire spirit of it, wouldn't
right.
it?
It's the only criteria, and it's with all clubs. There is an eligibility requirement that's the same as athletics. They have to be passing 6 courses, and they have to maintain that. So that's really the only eligibility. As you said, it's wide open, as all clubs and activities are.
And is there similar times that these clubs meet, or do you have or is that really up to the club how often they meet?
Well, what we do is we have a calendar so that the clubs don't all meet on the same day. You know, it might be the third Wednesday of the month, it might be the second Wednesday. Everyone rotates because in our building, a lot of the students are involved in multiple clubs. So we want to make sure that they can have that experience and be involved in as many clubs as possible without having them meet every week on a Monday.
And the last question I had, Scott, do you see this club as the group that could create more types of things like you did for the accreditation of the school, where it was that video? It seemed like that video really brought a lot of school pride to it, that then in turn also really brings the group together as a unit. So I just didn't know if you saw from, I can understand your perspective and what you're hoping to achieve. Do you see things adding on to that club to really boost up the school morale?
Right. I definitely think it's bringing the awareness of the issue, bringing the awareness of bullying and harassment, and making sure there's a constant reminder that not only is it inappropriate, but it's not going to be tolerated. Bringing up the morale of the students. Certainly, you know, it could dovetail onto something like the video that we taped for NEASC. But I think more importantly, it's just making sure, you know, the kids know we have a policy, but in a creative, kind of fun way, making sure we educate the students about bullying. And sometimes what we found, more the deans than myself, but we found that the kids didn't even realize they were bullying or they were harassing when they were doing things. So I think it's trying to be proactive, trying to educate the students, and hopefully in the end we deal with less of these issues and the students feel more comfortable and have a more positive self-esteem.
Thank you. I'll just end with saying I love the name. I'm glad that you kind of picked going after, you know, an established kind of group that's out there instead of just saying the, you know, Goodwill Club, or, you know, that it's really focused on a proven program that is working across the country right now. And to have this club exist within our school that then could create sort of mini ambassadors in the school that are there to not only show by example, but then also helping those that are struggling a little bit. Again, I see this club as an opportunity to create ambassadors of goodwill within the school system. So again, I applaud you bringing this forward, and you'll have my support.
Thank you.
I agree with your feelings that these are the sort of things that create emotions that are sometimes fleeting and ephemeral. So the fact that you're willing to actually do something concrete about keeping this spirit alive, as they say, I think is great. The one suggestion I would make, and my guess is you've already thought of it, is that if you could, and this dovetails with I think what Rhonda was speaking about, if you could periodically extend your reach into the middle and elementary schools. You're nodding your head, you've already thought of it. Great, because the feeling I get from talking to parents and reading what some people feel about this whole issue of bullying, harassment, is that it's happening long before kids get to high school. And anything you can do, I mean, I think you know that, you know, when a high school kid shows up in a middle school or an elementary school, you're a role model. And if you're saying this is unacceptable behavior and this is what you need to be thinking about and doing, I think that would be far more meaningful, perhaps, than a teacher saying it. So if you can extend it to the other schools, I think that'd be great, and I hope you find the time and the energy to do that. But do you have my full support? Please, go ahead.
I think you're much more willing to listen to someone around your own age who's gone through these experiences. I know that sometimes kids don't take teachers seriously, and as much as they should, but they don't. They're more likely to listen to your friends and people who really care about you. So I think it's going to just change the atmosphere of how we treat each other.
Great. Good luck. I sense this is a pro forma process, but I'll take a motion to approve this new club.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Your club exists. Good luck.
Thank you for stepping up.
Thank you very much, folks.
If you can, please come back if we can have time on the agenda, come back and let us know how the first year went.
What, you want a positive thing on the agenda, right?
I do. I'm dying for positive things on the agenda, so.
Thank you.
Good news, yes, exactly. Thank you both for your time. I think we're to Anna?
Acceptance
No,
of gifts.
accept-
Oh,
Acceptance of
gifts,
gifts.
yes, go ahead.
Talking about good news, we had a resident of Onset come in and make a donation of $212. His name is Noah Young, and the donation is to the Wareham Public Schools to be used at the school department's discretion for textbooks, salaries, and/or building repair. This is a gentleman who voted for the debt exclusions and override, felt bad that they did not pass, and after he read the article about the parent who gave $200, he has come forward with this donation of $212, and if we can have that continue, perhaps at every meeting we'll have another person coming in donating, and before you know it, we'll have enough to buy all the textbooks that we need.
Nice thought. I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now it's Ms. Miranda.
Final thing on the agenda?
Excuse me? What are you saying?
Final thing on the agenda?
Don't get on
Welcome,
TV.
Anna.
Good evening, everyone.
I know.
Could we try and control the peanut gallery?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Included in your packet, it seems like we haven't talked in a long time. So you'll see the June 30 balances on these revolving accounts that we normally report out on. And right now, the current August, as of last week, balance in the accounts. I'm really here, I don't have a presentation per se, I'm really here to answer your questions. I would encourage you, I have everything that I need in front of me, that if you, for example, were interested in just knowing this particular year, what we took in receipts for the full-day kindergarten, grant program, or any of these accounts. So I'm just really open to questions, because it's really rather self-explanatory.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mike?
Just real quick, on the transportation, don't we have a certain amount encumbered for something via town meeting, like that, like $60,000? Is that reflected here?
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, not.
What do you mean?
I meant that we needed all of the money in the revolving account to pay outstanding bills.
Did that directly go against town meeting? Is it?
Mr. Swett, you want to answer that one?
I asked a similar question recently in the confines of the superintendent's office. And his response at that time was, it's not encumbered until we actually take a specific action to encumber it, and that what town meeting did was allow us to encumber it. I'm not going to make a judgment as to whether that's accurate or not. What is clear is that that's the maximum we can spend related to vehicles out of the transportation department. And I think, in my own mind, that is, if not the letter, that's the spirit of what town meeting said to us, which is to say, if you want to buy vehicles with the transportation revolver, that's fine, and you can buy a maximum of $60,000 worth of vehicles.
It wasn't earmarking 60,000?
No, that was not my interpretation, and I don't think that's what town meeting intended to do. So the fact that we spent it to offset the operating budget deficit, I think is in the spirit of what was intended. Now, the real question, and we don't have that question before us yet, the real question is, let's say, and at some point this will occur, we end up with $70,000 in that account, okay? The real question becomes, okay, Is, now that we've got $60,000 or more in that account for fiscal year 13, is $60,000 encumbered? And I think we need to get a good answer to that question, because if it looks like we're going to need every dollar in order to meet the deficit that we anticipate from the operating budget, then it may be necessary for us to go in October and unencumber the 60,000, not with the intent of using more than that for buying buses, but with the intent of simply not encumbering any, because we can't afford to encumber it. Am I making sense?
Yes, but do I understand what you're saying is that even if town meeting encumbered it, it doesn't get encumbered till FY 13?
That was my interpretation at the time it occurred, that it was an FY 13 encumbrance. But frankly, since it's the first time it's been done,
Yeah.
I'm a little fuzzy on all of this. And the only reason I'm not upset about it or concerned about it is it's not like we spent it on something unacceptable and unnecessary. We literally spent it to operate the transportation department, which is exactly what we're supposed to use. So whether we spent it on operating expenses or new buses, the sense was, the purpose was entirely within the scope of that revolver. So the real question is, what did we really do at town meeting with this encumbering? Did we do it for FY 13? Did we do it at the expense of being able to operate the transportation department? Because if that's the case, we would have had to have gone to town meeting with a $60,000 bill, which was the size of the encumbrance. Now, here's what would have realistically happened. If we had gone to October town meeting and said, we've got $60,000 bill we can't pay, and we've got $60,000 that's encumbered that would pay that bill, and we'd like you to unencumber the $60,000 so we can pay the bill, I think it's a slam dunk that that's what would have happened for a variety of reasons. Because the spirit of it was, this is what we want you to use it on for buying new buses if you have the money.
Right. I appreciate your opinion.
But I want to assert, it is just my opinion and no more than that.
That's where I was going, and I was kind of curious why the superintendent asked you to answer the question. So I'd like to get the superintendent's opinion on whether on how this jives with town meeting.
I'm the one that wrote the article. I put it on town meeting floor for the purpose that in the charter, you cannot buy vehicles unless town meeting approves it. So the article's intention was that when money is available, now we have permission of town meeting to spend up to $60,000 to buy vehicles. That's how it was written. That was the intent of the article as described to me by the attorney for putting it on, and that was the reason it was put on.
That would be Attorney Bowen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's a pertinent question, and if we need to dot our i's and cross our t's better for the future, then we'll have to dot our i's and cross our t's better. And that may mean, and it's worth looking into, that may mean in October town meeting, we have to unencumber.
And I
Go ahead.
remember also when we were talking about putting that article on town meeting floor, it was because also of emergency situations. So meaning that if a sped bus breaks down and we have no other choice whatsoever, we can't make a split-second decision to say, all right, we'll just go and buy that. You need to be able to have town meeting approval to do that. And if you now all of a sudden don't have a way to transport children, and you can't do anything about it, that was, from what I remember, one of the other reasons and stuff. So now that we have the approval of town meeting to spend a portion of money on buses if we needed it.
Here's why I don't want to unencumber it, and I will hope that Council Bowen will support us in this. Because if the McKinney-Vento money is approved by the town, and our maintenance costs, for some reason we get lucky, and it doesn't cost us quite as much for maintenance, then I would love for us to be able to project that we'll actually have a $60,000 balance, and that we could actually buy a van or two that is so desperately needed. So if we don't, but if we unencumber, then we literally have to go back to town meeting again to encumber. So that's why I'm hoping that the flexibility that we used is in fact acceptable, and we'll ask Attorney Bowen to confirm that.
Thank you, that's what I was gonna ask for. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Anna.
No problem.
You started this whole thing by giving us these good numbers.
Well, and actually, I actually posed that question to the town administrator's office because we've never really encumbered out of
Exactly.
a revolving account.
This is
So
new for
just
all of us.
Procedurally, and I expect to get some responses sometimes, so they do know that, you know, my office is interested in just the accounting steps that are involved in that, so.
I
and at
think
the
it's
time-
particularly important we get that answer
Yeah.
sooner rather than later, so that we know whether we've got the flexibility to spend up to 60,000, and if we need the 60,000 for general operating purposes, we also have that flexibility. So if you could look into that for the next meeting, I'd appreciate it.
I will.
Especially, yeah, for the next meeting. Okay, any other questions on these revolving account balances?
I have one.
Yes.
So, we see a report like this, when you come before us, and it basically gives us the balances, in those accounts. I think what I've asked for, but I don't think ever, you know, on an agenda, and it doesn't even have to be on an agenda, but maybe a report. Is it possible to show us, the line items of where these dollars are expensed? So, meaning that, throughout the year, that we're taking the line item budget that you have, and putting a balance in that line item that are just revolvers. So we have the revenue in those accounts, but to be able to see the line items of where those dollars are being spent, it gives basically a transparent accounting of these revolvers.
What's in front of you is exactly what you've just asked for, out of the
in front of
accounting
me?
system, so these
Meaning
are
that,
the records.
What's in front of me? Okay, so I'm like,
These are the records. It's real, so you're looking at, it would involve about, you know, killing maybe a quarter of a tree for every meeting, to do this.
What
I mean, it's
system
just a lot to.
What
this-
system is it on?
It's on our accounting
Vadar.
system,
It's
Vadar.
it's a
Yes,
Vadar
this is
printout?
Oh, yeah, this is all formal accounting.
Which
So, for
can-
example, I can run a summary sheet that is the one that you're very accustomed to, that will tell you at least line item, just looking at amount encumbered. It's really set up very much like in the same format as the LEA budget, with transfers and budget available, receipts to date, expenditures, and your balance. Then, there's a subsequent report, a detail report that will identifies receipts first, the revenue account identifies the revenue that went into that revolving account, and then by accounts, the expenses. So if it's payroll, for example, driver's ed, I have driver's ed in front of me. You know, we carried over 3,500. Receipts last year was 11,060. Expenses 12,697. Mainly all out of driver ed salaries. It would just, you know, basically,
so
that's
the
the
11,000
breakdown
was
that you could
mostly
get.
going towards driver ed salary, so it went into the salary line item.
Yes, actually, driver's ed, all the costs except for two basic, you know, they took the car to the shop, you know, and
Yeah.
to get the inspection sticker annually.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. But, so if you, I mean, if you could figure out a way to do that without, it's just that
I
it's a
think
lot
that's
of
all I'm asking,
paper.
if it's available, being able to see that, but I mean, I do not want, you know, this and, you know, killing
I know.
many more trees, but if there is any way just to be able to think about how to be able to provide that.
Like
Because
a
if
summary kind
A
of thing?
summary, yeah.
So that,
you could do the
depending,
summary.
you know, so salary would be one thing, materials,
Yeah.
other things, whatever.
Salary, materials, right, just the high level, I mean, like even the bigger accounts, not the line by line, but the bigger accounts that we look at, whether it's administration, salary, textbooks and materials, those, being able to just see with each one of these accounts where the money is going to, that would be great to have this as part of that report that we're reviewing.
It would be, yeah, I think the summary report would do it, because it does break down the expenditures by their function.
Yeah.
Whether it is a professional salary versus clerical salary versus textbooks versus technology. So it's like the same, we have to mirror the same account structure for reporting purposes.
Right,
Because
and
in our
then-
end-of-year report, we're reporting all of these funds. So they have that same, so if it's a technology expenditure, it needs to be paid for out of a revolving account that has a technology function code. So as these things come up, sometimes we have to establish new accounts. So I can actually do that if you'd like. I know like right now,
But
I've been providing you, with the ones I think are the ones that are really critical in terms of fees and the athletics and transportation and full day.
Start where you think is
Yeah,
best, with the
I can do a
superintendent
summary
and the
report.
board and the chairs. But start where you think, and then maybe we can just go from there. But
Okay.
I think even taking that next step would be great.
That'd be fine, right.
I would like to go through each line item very quickly where it doesn't say encumbered. Okay?
Say that again?
The description of many of them are, encumbered or earmarked.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay? Anything that says earmarked or encumbered, I have no interest in. I have interest, but
Okay.
it's clear cut. So, summer school, it simply goes right back into the summer school program, correct?
Yes, yep, the fees from summer school go
Right.
directly right
School
back in.
property. This is the result, you have $28,000 in something that is generated by renting out school property, correct?
Yes, two outside groups.
What can you use that $28,000 for?
We normally reserve it for building types of.
That wasn't my question.
Repairs. We have to pay the custodial salaries out of that account because that expense comes out of renting the
But
building.
could you use it for anything?
No.
No,
This goes
no,
back to
if you
this.
look at that's on the chart, one of the revolving charts that kind of defines what you can use it on.
So you-
This one is not, anything goes, no.
Upkeep of rented.
So if you rent out the property, you have to use it to support the property in essence.
Correct.
Recognizing that money is fungible,
Buildings.
my favorite word. But nevertheless, we've got $28,000 in there. So if we've got a budget that's a little lean in one place, we could use this to support it in another place because of that wonderful F word.
Well, for
This
example,
is
problem-
right here.
I would feel
I
comfortable.
don't care what it says there, money is fungible.
All right, except you need to have reserve for unexpected.
Yeah.
So, when the water main in the middle of Viking Drive broke, and they told us we had to fix it, we had to hire the person to dig up the thing and pay the water department to fix it for $14,000. It was not budgeted, and it was fixed out of this account.
Completely understand the need for prudence.
Okay.
Completely understand the need for reserves. We don't have enough of them. This is just a theoretical. And the theoretical is,
I'm in the weeds.
you're in the weeds, and what I'm saying is, if you've got a line item that's too lean, okay, you can shift money into that as long as it's not one of the major accounts, in which case you come back to the school committee, right? But, and if you knew you had $28,000 to spend on something that was a line item in the budget, because it was legitimate to spend it on based on the revolver, that means you could, in fact, make that lean intentionally so that you'd have more money to put somewhere else. That's an accounting fact.
But then I'd have a hole in my reserve, so when the unexpected fell through the roof,
Right.
I wouldn't be able to fix it.
Right, so are you saying that anything less than $28,231 is an unacceptable level of prudence?
Yes, sir.
Really? That's fine tuning, so $28,229.
I would like 100,000 in there.
Okay,
Well, just to give you an example, when we had
enough.
a lightning strike.
I don't need an example,
Yeah.
we're all good, we're all good.
It's-
So,
be very
lost
expensive.
books, only used to replace books.
Yes.
Transportation, we know well. Then we've got encumbered and earmarked and encumbered. We've got this special asbestos removal thing.
Yep.
Insurance recovery. So you've got, you have an event, you get insurance money as a result of that event.
Yes.
And that has to be spent to make up for the money you spent as a result of the event,
Yes, exactly.
okay? Junior ROTC,
They pay half, the
Half the
government pays
salary.
half the salary, and we have to pay, so the money that comes in from the government goes into this account,
And
and
then
then it
quickly
goes
goes
out
out.
as part of salary.
got it, okay. The energy rebate automatically gets used to offset energy costs,
Yes.
okay? Okay, good.
That's it.
You lost your chance to
Okay.
ask a question.
All right.
No, we haven't answered this
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I just, you piqued my interest when you mentioned the lost books. Is that like we charge, families if their kids lose a book?
Yes, but primarily, I'm gonna say 99% from Wareham High School.
Yes.
Because in elementary or middle school, the end is far away, and people sometimes who lose it don't pay. There's not a lot we can do. But if you are a senior in high school and you cannot graduate unless you've paid your debt, all of a sudden it gets paid and it goes into this account. So since the high school generates this income, it's used for high school books, but could be used for any books.
But why can't you transfer the debt from middle school to high school?
I believe we do that on occasion.
Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
But what you're saying is in the elementary schools, the younger grades, that there's little or no recourse if they lose a book?
It's difficult, because the kind of thing is when the book bag gets dropped into the puddle, it's not on purpose, it's an accident, and then the book is ruined. It's different from a high school student who might have on purpose lost it.
I like the idea though from middle to high.
Yeah,
We do the same thing for food service, the bill
The debt
follows
does
them.
follow them.
Yeah, I think
It
it
just,
should.
it ends up falling on the shoulders of the high school.
However,
but
the reality
debt
is
does follow them.
some families disappear from the system, and you're left with the debt, and there's not much you
Well,
can do about
if it does, it does, and you write off the debt, and that's it.
And is it the sort of thing where the free reduced lunch is exempt from that sort of thing to graduate, or, okay,
No,
I
if
would
you
hope
owe,
not.
you pay.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a good question,
Yeah.
I would hope not. All right. We all set with Anna?
Yep.
Any
Yeah.
questions? No?
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other business people would like to bring before the committee? We're really gonna end this meeting before 8:30.
yeah.
Michelle, you can handle this emotionally? Okay. Bruce can definitely handle it. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Well, sorry. I keep.
This is Mr. Flaherty who's speaking, everybody.
This is, yes. It's just to go back to the superintendent's report, and I was going through this document, and, no, I don't know if I have the right one. I don't.
The choice one?
No,
No,
no.
this is the-
I was looking for the one with the recalled teachers, and in that list was the 4 that we brought back.
Did I have that on there?
Yes, you did. It was the personnel report list.
Yeah,
Oh.
I can't find, yeah? This one, yes.
Yes, I saw that too.
I have to look for it.
It's, yeah, no, you can pass it down.
Here you go.
Thank you.
And your
Oh, all right. So
question,
you're looking at the full list of those
The-
recalled?
Yeah, there's a section of recalled, and there's more than 4, and, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had, we created 2 new kindergarten positions that we needed to fill. We had
Yeah.
2 special needs teachers who were not reappointed that we needed to fill. And some of our elementary teachers who were on recall had the certificate to do those positions. So they were recalled to those special ed positions.
And we were able to do that how? Was that with the money that we got with
No,
the?
no, that was a position that was a funded position. The person was not reappointed.
Okay.
Not laid off or riffed. In the first 3 years, somebody can be given a letter and said that you're not reappointed to the next year.
Gotcha.
Which made an opening and we were able to recall one of our teachers to that position.
Okay.
So that's 4 positions. And I believe, Michelle, am I correct that some of these rejected the recall?
If I wrote decline
Decline.
next to it.
Yeah.
Oh, you wrote
Yeah,
decline
the
next,
number
I'm
is-
It's
sorry.
in big caps.
Yes, so we had teachers that we recalled that then had taken other positions in other systems as part of this too. So that's why it's a larger number than the 4.
Okay.
I'll just make that statement, and also if you take a look, 7 of the ones on here are part-time. They're not even full-time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you converted them or something.
No, the part-time is because when we were creating the recall list, and we had I think we had about 10 positions of elementary. But in order to do that, the people at the bottom were our interventionists, which were half-time positions. So we needed to lay them off and to move up high enough to make enough full-time positions for the people to come up with the money for that $780,000. So we have recall, I believe, and Michelle can correct me, but most of the teachers on that list, even though we don't have the same number of teachers that we had before, have had an opportunity at the recall list, and because of the teachers that took other work or other positions were created by not reappointing somebody, that the majority of those people
Resignations, too.
have had an opportunity to come back, therefore limiting our exposure on unemployment.
Okay. All right.
And once it may take until the end of September, but we'll have a report for you on budgeted FTEs to compare 11, 12, and 13, so you can actually see per school the number of positions that were in 12 and the number in 13 to actually show, those fewer positions that we have.
Maybe like that org chart?
Yes, it would be like that, except it's laid out differently.
Okay. Thank you. You can keep that.
Thank you.
And I can't believe I'm doing this, but I do have one comment. I know, one comment regarding another piece of material that you gave us, which was the training schedule.
Yes.
For when the teachers are coming back.
Yes.
I'm assuming because I don't see power schools as something that we're going to be teaching in the elementary school, that we're not rolling out power schools to the elementary level this year.
You may recall that part of that conversation was that we needed to have technology, new hardware for each of the teachers' desks.
Okay.
And since the $284,000 was turned down at the ballot box, I don't have that money to roll that out. I did have a conversation today with the coordinator of technology about continuing the pilot. We had a pilot that we started, which we would expand it to a group of teachers and open up the way to get on a Power School for all elementary
Portal,
parents,
yeah.
the portal, thank you. To allow parents to go on and change contact information and so forth. And for that pilot group, by the end of the second term, we would have a list of assignments. The difficulty with elementary school is that it is a standards-based report card. And so one assignment may actually affect 5 different standards. And then to have them grade, so you do a book report. It's not just the writing of it. It could be in mechanics, it could be on the presentation, it could be on the artwork. And for the teacher then to have to go in and grade all 5 of them, the thought was, let's start with the list of assignments so that parents can see what the assignments are, and teachers can give more backup information within that. Get them used to doing that with the people that do have the machines, and then hopefully keep moving it on as we can find more resources.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yep, so moved.
All set, Mike?
All set.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.